We're here with Nancy Garvey today. She's one of our customers at Bulb, and back in 2018, her and her team implemented district-wide Bulb digital portfolios for their whole district. So in this webinar, Nancy Garvey will be sharing her story. And instead of going through all of the objectives that we're going to be covering today, Nancy, I would just love to hand it over to you right now and share with us who you are, what you do, your background in education. Just help us get to know you better.
Sure. My name is Nancy Garvey, and I work for Coppell Independent School District. And actually, I've never worked in any other school district. I started way back graduating from college and going straight into the classroom, and worked at a couple of the elementary schools in our district. And then they opened up this super cool position called, well, then it was called Instructional Technology Specialist. And I started there in 2004 with that, well, here in Coppell. And then just kind of went up the ranks, I guess, like, became team leader after a few years, and just really felt a passion for instructional technology and digital learning, and kind of kept going, was mentored by one of my fabulous bosses. And then when she ended up leaving the school district, the position opened up, and it just seemed natural for me to kind of take it on, because I have such a passion for our community and our kids and our teachers that anything I could do to support them was just what I wanted to do. And so I've just kind of been plugging away and been a part of lots of really great conversations within our district, and just continue to do whatever I can to support them. So
that's fantastic. Thank you. And so, yeah, I've gotten to know Nancy a little bit just in our brief conversations. And I can tell you that this webinar, especially from our own internal team, we're really excited to cover, because she has very graciously shared a lot of excellent resources, what looks to be like a solid framework for how you implement EdTech tools within your district, that we're going to synthesize and put it into Bulb and make sure that we share that out afterwards. It probably won't happen with the resources that we'll share out for the blog that follows, but it will be coming out, and it will warrant its own announcement, because of the level of detail and the work that her and her team put in to do this. So we're excited for what you've got to talk about today. And so I just want to get started with our questions, knowing that we've got a few in here. Sure. So we'll just start off with Nancy, if you don't mind telling our attendees today, what were Coppell's reasons for choosing to implement digital portfolios in the first place?
It's a kind of a funny story, only because it goes back really far. In fact, it goes back to some of our district improvement plans back in like 2011. At first in 2011, we were talking about digital portfolios as like a communication system, a way for our learners to communicate like things that they've learned and showcase the work that they're doing. And then as I was kind of digging back into some of our district improvement plans, it was really neat to kind of see the growth that we had as district leadership, as basically educators in general, as to like what a digital portfolio should do and be like for our learners. And through like 2015, we started talking about community-based accountability. And like, how can we really, that's a big fancy word for how do we showcase to our parents and community that our children are learning? As we moved into iPads and one-to-one devices, a lot of the work the kids were doing started to become digital. And so you didn't see those worksheets coming home, or those papers being written and then being graded with red ink, and then parents being able to kind of take a look at where their kids' learning was. And what we found is we needed to find a communication system that helped our parents see the learning and understand it. And so it became, as we got into like our 2019, we really talked a lot about qualitative and quantitative assessment. And it's not just about a child's grades or a test they make on STAR or something like that, but a child is more than an assessment, and that we really needed to find a way to showcase to themselves as learners, to our educators, to our parents and our community, what types of things our kids were doing in the classroom and how amazing they are and how much growth they're making without looking at a 97 or an 87%.
They're not just a number, right? It's the whole student experience. And yeah, that makes total sense. So that makes complete sense as to why you would want to incorporate digital portfolios, because they do help support all of those areas, and they really do help that student also recognize their learning, their growth, and just how they appreciate the learning that's happening. So knowing that, can you walk us through your team's process from the decision to implement Bulb to the first day in the classroom? What did that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so the decision took a little bit because we wanted to make sure that we invested in the stakeholders in our school district. And so the process started with a digital portfolio committee. And I think the importance of that committee is, well, one thing I did with that committee is made sure that we had representatives from all levels and all different content areas. So I had a few elementary, from kindergarten through 5th grade educators. Then we had some middle school educators, and then we had high school educators. But then within secondary, we made sure we had a science and a CTE and a math, and just really made sure that the group itself, and I also made sure that they weren't all tech savvy. They weren't all like my people I always go to for things. Although I did see Jody's name on here, and she is a go-to for me. But we really wanted to make sure that it was everybody's voice and not just like, oh, the tech savvy people or the not tech savvy people. And then we got together and spent a lot of time researching digital portfolios, why they were important in education, what we should be doing with it, what should it even be giving us at the end, and really had some good pointed discussions, which drew us to a purpose statement. And we wanted to make sure as a group, kindergarten teacher, 12th grade teacher, that we were creating a purpose for all of our learners and not just one single set of learners. And so they worked really hard, spent a couple of days in different groups, and they came up with this purpose statement. And then everything that we did from that point drove from the purpose statement. So then what we did in the background is we created a spreadsheet of like what the needs were, like what do our teachers need in a digital portfolio? And that was where our committee was really helpful. Well, we need to make sure that parents can see it. We need to make sure that, well, in kindergarten, it's easy to upload something. And we want to make sure that, you know, that it is something that we can be able to show growth on. And we talked a lot about all these things. And so on the spreadsheet, we had all our needs. And then my team did some research on digital portfolios around our district. Prior to kind of creating a district implementation, our campuses and our teachers were kind of still going with digital portfolios, but it was a very singular system. Like some teachers were using Google Sites, some teachers were using Bulb, some teachers were using Seesaw. And we needed to find a way to cohesively work on one platform to make what's best for our kids, which is a vertical growth of K-12, instead of like, oh, well, in 4th grade, I used Google Sites and that's over here and this link's here. And oh, and you know, in middle school, we use Bulb. And so now they're having like all these different portfolios. So we wanted to make sure we had one. So we kind of took every platform that we wanted to look at and then started doing checkboxes and trying to figure out like which ones hit a lot of our needs. And y'all know with ed tech, not everything's you're not gonna get 100% check boxes. Like you're just not, because everybody's looking for something different. But we really wanted to find who were fulfilling a lot of our check boxes. And so we got down to 3, and we had those companies come in and present to our committee and really dive into what is best for all of our kids, not just what's best for high school kids and what's best for kindergarten kids, but what's best for everybody and how can we learn to grow together. And that's how we ended up on Bulb. After we found the platform, that was like what, like 1/3 of the steps. Like next, yeah. It's like, okay, how do you bring all your stakeholders on board? Okay, we got this digital committee, and we've got this purpose statement. Well, what's next? Well, Dr. Applegate really wanted to be able to provide professional learning for all educators starting in the beginning of the year. Like we weren't gonna just like, oh, let's just bring in the middle school and start with them and then like phase in people. Like she was ready to go. And so we worked with Bulb and we created kind of like a trainer of the trainer model and created a presentation that every trainer was going to use. And it was like a 3-hour learning experience. And then we had we have about 1,000 teachers. Then we had to figure out how to get them all in within a 3-day span and make sure everybody heard and talked about the same thing, which we made sure that the why was a really big part of that conversation. We didn't just say, hey, good morning, we're going to show you how to log into your platform. Like we spent probably half of the time just on the why and helping educators process why this would be important for their learners and why this was a great step for our district and for our kids. So after we did all that, we had librarians helping us train. We had our digital learning coaches helping us train, but we also have a lot of teachers. And so we recruited a bunch of Bulb people and we kind of separated everybody and kind of made some partnerships. And then we trained and trained. And really, I don't like to use that word trained, but I know I just did. It's really like we talked about it, and we really tried to process it together, and kind of figure out what it means to each level and each group, and have those conversations. We were really strategic too in like who was in the room together, so that they had people to talk to. So we had like all of our ELA middle school 6th grade in one room. Now that was squishy, and it was hot because it was the summer and we didn't have air conditioning, but at least the right people were together having those conversations and talking about it as a campus, talking about it as a grade level, which I felt like was a really great like strength to push us off. I think then what we did is we also built templates for each level. We had an elementary template, a middle school template, and a high school template based on each of the learners' types of needs. And then we took those and started introducing them to the educators so that we could create a process to introduce to the learners. So that's kind of where we got to. And then we got those templates in the hands of the kids. That took a long time because there's a lot of kids and a lot of teachers, but we worked on it in the fall. And now we're just kind of, with those templates, we're just trying to figure out like what's next, because once you build the template, you don't want to start it every year over again. And so now we're kind of working into like, how does that work with grade levels and content areas, and still kind of building on that because we're just finishing up our year 2, not to mention COVID. So like we're still kind of in that process of like figuring out those kinds of things.
That's fantastic. And actually, so hearing you say that you had them in groups and thinking of, you've got your certain set of teachers in this group, and you actually shared with me the principal exemplar.
Yeah.
So curious, knowing that you talked about teachers and the training that they've experienced and the why, where do the principals play in all of this? Because her particular portfolio is quite beautiful.
Yeah.
For a principal, that's not something you would expect to always see.
Well, and that's a good point. And I would say that has, okay, so they were involved in all of those same trainings. So they were invited to sit with, and they picked like one of their grade levels. Like if so, Denton Creek Elementary was in a room together, and I think we did K2, K1 together. And then there was a 2-3 room and a 4-5 room. And so the principals were able to pick a room and then sit and learn as well. And then our assistant superintendent worked really hard throughout the school year to make sure that conversation of both portfolios stayed in the admin meetings and talking about them. Principals halfway through the year had to showcase some of their, some of the portfolios that their learners were making. And then this school year, not the first year we implemented, but this past school year, it was required that all of our curriculum directors, principals, and admin leadership all had to turn in their goal setting with Bulb so that they are working on it themselves. And so they are building their portfolios. They are, taking their goals and their evidence and putting it in Bulb so that they have an understanding and can model what it looks like. And 2, just even understanding the hiccups that come along with it. And if they're in a classroom and they see a kid struggling or a teacher struggling, like they'd be like, oh yeah, man, I did that, whenever I was working on mine too. And I think it builds empathy and it builds a model. And then it's been really helpful. Now I'll tell you, we have all sorts of different types of principals, and everybody's on their own journey. And I think it's wonderful, like when I have those conversations with maybe a principal who's just now working it out and figuring it out and asking good questions. And I'm as happy working with a principal who's just learning it versus working with that example that I shared with you, that principal too, because they're just all on their own pathway. And I think that's okay, especially in our 2nd year of implementation. Oh, I think you're muted. Sorry.
Because I'm multitasking and I shouldn't be doing that. So thank you, because as you were saying that, I was actually typing into the group here in the chat. You'll see that I did link up to Lori Squall's portfolio if you want to take a peek at the principal there. But it's so true, because everybody's going to be on their own journey at their own pace, going about it in different ways, but that it's all coming together and they're all recognizing that shared value of how this benefits students, teachers, and in this case, the principal, because she's able to also be a part of this experience.
She's so funny because she makes jokes. She's like, well, everybody just, makes, like laughs at me whenever I have to showcase something, in my Bulb, because, the thing about Lori is that she was using something else prior to Bulb, and just really took on trying to figure out a way to get it into Bulb. And so she's doing her newsletter that way. And she like, this is she's been on a trajectory. Like, you're seeing the final product of about 2 years of work for her. Yeah. And I think, and if everyone can see like where she started, and this is what I always talk about, is like, you look at where she started, don't look at where she's ended, because that's your path. Like, you'll get there. You just need to take it one step at a time. And then I'll talk to them about like, well, do you want to just talk about newsletters? Like, and don't worry about anything else, or do you just want to talk about your goals? And once you have that, you're going to see another way to use it. And, you know, those are kind of the conversations that we have. She just started as a middle school principal. She's moving from elementary to middle, and she used her Bulb to explain to her families and her teachers like who she is. And she said it was just she got phenomenal responses because they were able to see her story, and it was really cool.
That's fantastic. I love hearing that stuff. So actually hearing you share all this now kind of leads into our next question. And you've shared some of the challenges and the successes. Can you give us any more detail around what were the challenges and the successes that you've seen along the way, especially knowing that, as you shared, right, Lori's is at the end. Mm-hmm. And it's a process. It's going to take time. You're not going to get it overnight, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of ironic, you know, when you're talking about digital portfolios, showcasing your learning process,
right?
It's ironic that, you know, I guess I'm using that terminology. Maybe it's on purpose. I don't know. But I would say some of the challenges that we have faced, we have in our school district, we have 13,000 learners, and we have 17 different campuses. So our original like launch was great. And we had everybody on the same page, kind of going into their classrooms, the same basic understanding. Not everyone was as evolved as other people, and they were all on their own trajectory and moving forward. And I think some of the things that we found that are challenging is keeping that conversation going. Sometimes you have those rock star educators who take it and they just fly with it, and they're on their journey and they are running. I was like, and then you've got educators who know it's there and are walking on their journey and trying to figure it out, and, you know, have other things to balance. And then you have educators who are like, yeah, I see it, you know, and I'm on this journey with you, but I'm not going as fast as you are. And I think one of the challenges there is keeping everybody and supporting everybody where they are on their journey. And especially another big challenge in year 2 and now going into year 3 is our new hires, and getting them into a space where they are ready to support their learners who are on their 3rd year. Also with other educator and teammates who may be on different paths of their journey, and trying to fit in and figure out where they are and keeping that training going. One thing I didn't talk about is that we did provide an online learning space, so that when we had new educators come on, or educators that missed the training, we tried to replicate the beginning of the year training. It's like a 6-module training with like the why and the articles, so that if they were online or they were coming online at a different time, that we could use that. It's been helpful, but there's still so many gaps that you don't get when you're not talking to somebody. But I will say that what we try to do with that is embed our one-to-one coaching with our digital learning coaches and kind of help those new educators along. But it's been difficult to just make sure that we keep the process going while we're introducing this to so many new people. I would also say the template that I mentioned earlier was a bit of a challenge. Like, and I already mentioned this a little bit, but just that, like, now you go into year 2 and 3, you don't just start that template over again. And like, what does that look like? And making sure that everybody has a good understanding of how to kind of merge that template to be their own, because the end goal is that the learners take ownership of their template, of their portfolio, and they start building when they want to build. They don't have to wait for a teacher to tell them, here's a project for you or whatever. Like, we want them to be able to build those skills as they're going, so that as they get into their own journey, they're like, oh, like, I don't care what grade they are. 5th grade, they want to build their own page. 12th grade, they're ready to use it for college. And maybe a teacher's not telling them to do it, but they're like, oh, this is actually a really good place for me to showcase my interests and showcase who I am as a person. I think that's our goal, is just to teach them how to get to that place and then how to build it correctly. I would say that would probably end up being one of our successes, is seeing our kids beginning to use it as their own. Not everybody does, but we're starting to see that a lot, and seeing their personalities come out in their portfolios is really fun. But my team and I always talk, we always kind of like bring templates, or not templates, why do I keep saying that? bring portfolios to the table in some of our meetings just so that we can ooh and ah over what our kids are doing. We get teary-eyed, we cry about things because, well, I'm an emotional person and I get so verklempt about looking at kids and their growth and what they're doing. And so we try and celebrate those successes. We look for exemplars all the time, so that one, we can keep ourselves going and know that we're showcasing the right things and we're really helping educators. And I think the biggest, success that we're seeing is moving our educators from thinking that a portfolio is only for showcase and getting them to understand and kind of see that they can use portfolios as a process of learning and helping kids reflect on their learning, and it not be an end product, but to be an all the way through product. And I think that's what was one of our best successes, is just seeing those educators with those aha moments, building templates for learning. And that's kind of something that I know we're about to get into, but that's kind of something that we've seen some cool successes in with COVID, is if there's a built template, the kids can be at home working through their learning and being able to get through all the way to the end of reflection and have this page of what they've done and what they're thinking about.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I'm right there with you. It's those kinds of things that, again, that's how you want to measure success, right? You want to just be able to look at the portfolio and say, this student went above and beyond. They did more. They weren't asked to do. They just did it because they get it. They're using it. They're showing their learning. And that process is so key.
Yeah.
And recognizing that it's not about the end. It's about the journey that you're taking.
Yeah, and I was just saying, like, I can't wait to see like our 3rd and 4th graders like right now when they're in high school, and like what we've done to help them see these skills and build them so that when they get older, because like, right now at our high school level, a lot of it is being taught on the fly, and they're they're about to leave us. And so like, they haven't seen the power of the build of the portfolio yet, but yet, we're still going with them and they're still doing all the work. But I can't wait to see our 3rd and 4th graders and getting this experience every year and building and having these skills. Like, I can't wait to see what they're doing with it.
And see where they're going. Well, and so to that, actually, I attended at TCEA this past February. Some of your team spoke, and I was just in awe to know that they had even implemented this for PE. Yeah. So there were, there's a page, there's a collection, there's a template for PE. There's, I mean, it can be threaded throughout all of the learning. It's not just for ELA. It's not just for CTE. It does fit, and it has a place throughout all of these different ways of learning.
That's one of my favorite stories. And I didn't want to bore you all with the story, but it really is a really cool conversation that we started having halfway through the school year with the PE department. They were like, oh, like we can record them in kindergarten, and then they can record themselves in 1st grade, and they have skills that go all the way K-5. Like, they have skills that kids are learning, like jumping rope, basketball, dribbling. Like, there's several of them that go throughout the grade levels. Yeah. And they just started talking about how cool is it that if we keep doing this and we just have them bring their iPads and record their skill every year, that by the end of the year, by the end of 5th grade, they're going to see themselves learning to jump rope. And I get to benefit from this one because my son is a 1st grader. And so he like already has his bulb for his kindergarten and his 1st grade jumping. Now, I think we missed 2nd grade because I think it's in the spring. So that's sad. So I probably need to remind myself to just do the video myself. But anyways, it's such a cool story. And I got to be part of the conversations with the PE teachers all together, and how they kept brainstorming off of each other and talking about what they were doing, and talking about how they had like partner groups, like holding the iPads, and like how they got them prepared for it. And it's such a cool story.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. So talking about that and moving into this next area that we were just saying, after that 1st year of using digital portfolios, how did you measure the success of the implementation? Did your team sit down and just have a party, or?
We always have a party.
Yeah.
I would say this is a tough one for me because I think I need to do better at measuring success and implementations, and like really taking a time to reflect on it and figure out a way to really see the numbers. I was telling you a funny story earlier about how Bria, one of our consultants at Bulb, like had to literally email me and be like, your page usage is out the door. Like, and I had and I should probably know that, and I should probably be looking at that data, but unfortunately I'm terrible at that. But I will tell you some of the things we did do. Like our assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction was really good about, like I told you before, about embedding those conversations in administrator meetings and stuff like that. And halfway through the year, she had them showcase some of the exemplars from their campus. And that was a big hit for me, like seeing principals talking about the kids' bulb portfolios and like what's happening in the classroom was really cool. My team also gathered exemplars and we really looked at them in the spring. And really that was not for data gathering. I'm just gonna throw myself under the bus. That was more for professional learning. We were trying to figure out new ways to kind of approach digital portfolios and it not just be like, how do I do it? But like, how do I communicate through a digital portfolio? How do I think critically through a digital portfolio? And in those moments, like we needed exemplars and it was just so fun to have a party and sit back and be like, okay, I went and got my exemplars and y'all are not even gonna, you're just gonna die knowing. And you know, I spend time on campuses too and I like to roam in and out of classrooms. We do site visits all the time. And every time I'm seeing portfolios. I'm hearing the conversation of portfolios. One of Braden's former educators stopped me in the hallway when I was at her campus. And she was like, oh my gosh. She's like, Bulb is so easy. First grade teacher. She's like, I have them record on their iPads and use their screen recording. And we upload right into Bulb on a page. And then they reflect on what they're doing and what they're talking about. And she's like, and then I'm done. And then they have this portfolio entry. And I'm like, girl, it's just like, it's those kind of things that are happening and their aha moments for me equals success. And again, everybody's aha moments are different. And I think as long as they are on the trajectory, I feel really good about where we're going.
Fantastic. That's so that's great. And now we're going to move into, it's been a great, year and then another year and a half and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And so when your district began closing schools due to COVID-19 and the whole district, right? I mean, pretty much everything shut down. So did Capel decide to incorporate digital portfolios in the remote learning plan? And if so, what did that look like for your educators and students?
So I'm going to be really honest with you and just tell you that I'm just really glad I'm sitting here today and had survived COVID.
There should be stickers, something, an award, a badge.
It should say I taught in COVID. Because, with my role as director of digital learning, we moved everything from face-to-face to online. Like we didn't even have like a blended stop in the middle, right? Like, no, we went straight on. We were lucky because our teachers were already using a learning management system. And so that was kind of one of those things where we looked at what we needed to do right away. So the first 2 to 3 weeks, I'm going to be really honest with you, I was just happy I was surviving each day. And we were supporting our educators in that just-in-time training. How do you get up online in a Zoom? How do you use your learning management system, not for blended, but for virtual, like you're not gonna be able to see your kids? How do you add recordings into your Schoology course? But what was really interesting is as we started building more curriculum and as our digital learning coaches began working with educators, we found that the best support we could offer at times were to help them build templates so that they could use those templates in their classroom so that the kids were building in the platform. Like I know, and I think hopefully Jody's still on here. I'm going to give props to her. Like she said
hi to you, by the way.
Oh, she did? Yeah, she does a really great job using Bulb as for their experiments and for their lessons, building a learning process for them to kind of follow so that they're taking their learning and kind of embedding pictures, embedding videos, whatever it is, and kind of taking them through the process. And those were the things that we were trying to replicate as we got near the end of the school year. But what I will tell you, what COVID did for us is it helped us really see the need for next year and like, what can we do? Because I mean, COVID, like you were just flying by the seat of your pants, trying to make sure that your kids were supported and your kids knew what they were doing and had an opportunity to ask questions. Like that's basically all you were doing. But as we were going along, like Mary Kemper, I know she's done a webinar for Bulb too about this, because what we started seeing is, and Mary can attest to it, is templates were the way to go because it was a way for you to lead kids through learning without physically having to be there telling them what the next steps were. And I think that we saw such a value in that is such a big focus for us going forward, is like, how can we create these templates that learners can just pull into their portfolio and be able to start tracking their learning process, pulling the video that they made or the document that they created, and instead of turning in 8 things into Schoology, being able to turn in their portfolio page and be able to have an educator look at their learning process, look at what they have to say about that document, and not just, here's a document that I made and I finished.
Right. Check it off. It's done, versus I get to go in, see the work. I can comment. I can provide that narrative feedback. I can be engaged.
Yeah. So where I wish I could say from day one, we had bulb templates ready for every grade level and every learner to be able to do their lessons. I think the bigger learning lesson is that it is a valid and important part of the learning process. And how can we figure out ways to build it more next year?
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, so this is perfect then, because we're going to go right into that next question, which is, you know, thinking about that 2021 school year and the ed tech tools that Coppell is using. Yeah. What role is digital portfolios going to play with this new learning environment that you guys are still creating, right? You're still figuring out what this really is going to look like.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what I've already said, and it would just be that we see the value of helping educators build templates and build ways for learners to process their learning and help them get through a learning experience in a way that will make sense to them, and may potentially even, like, some of the things we've talked about, which we haven't done yet, but we talked about, like, adding help videos in the template, so that, like, instead of having all the things in Schoology and accessing the links, or, you know, those kind of things, that, like, if I'm going along, if our learners know how to delete, you know, pieces of it, they can watch the how-to video, watch the learning pieces, and then follow along and answer questions and do those types of things. So we've talked about doing that. We've talked about just, like, reflection and exit tickets, pulling them out of Google Forms and kind of putting them into a space where, because Google Forms, they answer and they do a great job, but then it stays with the educator.
Right.
What we'd love to do is bring those exit tickets more in the front, and be able to allow a parent to go back and look. And that is another thing that we're super excited about for next year. Don't know when we're going to implement it. Not saying August 1st, but the parent accounts, I think, are going to be game changers, because, like I said earlier, in 2015, we were looking for a way to help our parents see the learning. And yeah, you can go and look at their portfolio and go to their link and have them log in, or go to their Bulb app on their iPad. But I think there's something to a parent having their own account and having the ability to leave comments and provide feedback, which is something that I enjoy doing with my son. And I think that it will be a process, and I'm not saying that we're going to do it on August 1st, but it is something we're looking forward to implementing, and working out a way for our parents to be more involved.
That's great. Yeah. And I can attest to that as well. I thoroughly enjoy being able to have my own account and see what my child's doing and make those comments, mm-hmm. and provide that feedback. So if you don't mind, because I know that you shared with me quite a few template examples and talking about templates and how that's going to play that big role this coming year, is there any that you can share with us here that just to kind of give us an idea of what your team is talking about, working on, and putting together, or that's already been implemented and it's working successfully?
Yeah. So basically, what I try and ask my and I'm going to share my screen here. I'm trying to think where our it is, as they build these templates, one of the things we're working hard to do, and I don't think we're 100% there yet, but we're really trying to figure out ways to share across the district when we make things. So, and this is probably a longer story than you need to know, but we just recently changed our structure with the digital learning coaches. We gained a new campus, but you know, in these times, we weren't able to gain a new digital learning coach. And prior to this year, we were campus-based. So when we added a new campus and didn't add a new person, we had to think differently. And so we did, and we moved our digital learning coaches to, at the elementary level, grade bands. So they supported like a grade band across the district, or content areas at the secondary level. So I have like a science DLC, a math DLC. And they are charged and responsible to work with, like, in, like, say 612, since Jody's here, like science. So we have like a science DLC. And so with that comes the ability to share things across the district. Doesn't always happen, doesn't always get there all the time, but when you're looking at the curriculum and you're building for a teacher at Mockingbird Elementary, and you are already supporting that same grade level at another elementary, it's easy to kind of have those conversations of like, hey, I built this over here. You're already doing this curriculum right now. Here's something that's already made for you. What do you think? So one place we like to house all of our stuff, which I think is another success, is that we built a digital learning coach bulb. So not like Nancy's bulb, not Brian's bulb, but a bulb for our whole team. And we like to house a lot of the stuff that's in there.
And we have that link. I know you shared that with us as well.
Yes,
I believe that's the one.
I'm clicking on. And of course,
Okay.
my Wi-Fi.
So that'll be shared.
My Wi-Fi is like, are you tired? Okay, here.
And thank you, Joyce, for asking that. She actually sent the question of, can we see some of those templates right now? And I think that was,
sure.
She and I had the same thought there. But all of these templates, along with a bunch more, we will be sharing those out as promised following the webinar. It'll be shared out with the follow-up email.
Thanks. So we're trying to model the use of it. So like our digital learning coaches model it too. Like they have their own portfolios, but then we also are trying to like curate and store things within this. And you can take a look at this. We've built a showcase of our COVID work, not just about bulb, but just in general, like Coppell ISD and like the work that we've done. But I'm going to go into this bulb collection, the bulb collection, which is ironic too. And kind of show you like we try to put our professional learning together too, like within a bulb page so that they have places to go and resources to pull. It depends. We are not doing that consistently, but now with COVID, this is another one of those things where like we're realizing that consistency is best and that we need to kind of put together some like procedures as to like what we do every time we do something. And I'm probably getting, so here are some reflection templates. I'll just start there. So in there, we created a distance learning reflection. So we actually sent out a reflection template, just trying to model the use right at the end of the year for teachers to fill out a reflection of like their time during distance learning. Because if there's anybody that spent more time learning, I'm gonna pretty much guarantee you that the teachers probably learned more than the learners did between March and May. I think because it was such a large learning curve. And what I love about it is that nobody complained about the learning. They did it because it was what was best for their kids. And man, oh man, if they could just reflect on that and take what they learned in these 9 weeks and figure out what they liked about it and what they want to do in the fall. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? So
that's a great point. Yeah.
Learning reflection. We built like a Dear Future Student reflection so that they can kind of talk about it. So that's for them. For when I say them, I mean for educators. Sorry, my screen here, team resources. So here are the portfolio templates that we made. I was talking about for the beginning of the school year. We made an elementary digital portfolio, middle school and high school. You'll see that there are 2 other templates because we have 2 campuses that work a little bit differently and they don't work. One of them is an IB campus and one of them is built-in houses instead of grade levels. So we had to kind of like make some, that's another challenge I should have talked about. But just to give you an example. So every learner started off with a My Story collection, a language arts, a math, a science, a social studies, and then special. So this is where that PE piece would go. And then basically what we found is once they made this inside of science, instead of just putting in like what they're doing, we decided to start labeling things by grade level and like trying to help them kind of build those collections. So I'm going to get out of those. I want to get to the reflection one, so sorry.
And those are all accessible to your educators at any point. They can come into this page and they can pull down what they need. Yeah,
and usually it ends up being like a digital learning coach is working with them and they'll direct them with a link to it. Like they'll email it to them or, you know, that kind of thing. Or they can come here. Like this is all like open for them to look at. So then, so this is like classroom resources. So I'm going to go into these reflection templates, which is where I thought I was going. But okay, so here's some examples like learner roadmap to success reflection, the 3-2-1 check for understanding. And they're very simple. It is not like, there's not a ton of stuff on the page, because the point is it's just to lead the learners to think and then write whatever they want to write or add whatever they want to write. So we just do a 3, 2, 1, consider how you want to respond, and then you can record 3 things you learned about the lesson. I believe this one was made for younger kiddos, so we were using the app on this one so they could record their audio. And then it's like, I learned about blah, blah, and blah, and then record 2 things you found interesting. So just really simple. They can just pull that template right into their course, change the name based on whatever they're reflecting upon, whatever learning lesson, and then they go. Easy exit slip prompts. So again, we're talking about these exit slips. So these are like, this is a bunch of them. So the idea of this one is for an educator to pull this template and then erase the ones that they want to, like they don't need right now, and be able to then create the template for their learners and then share it. So they just have a bunch of different like things that you can do when it comes to exit tickets. And again, you know, you just want to keep that learning visible instead of behind a form. Instead of it's something that they're turning in, make it something that they're processing through. I'm trying to think. Do you want me to? I'm trying to think where I want to go.
Well, so if you're okay with it, what I'm thinking is maybe we leave that sitting there, knowing that we've got Q&A coming up.
Okay.
And depending upon what people are asking, especially knowing that some were saying, can we see some of these templates? Something might come to mind. So,
sure.
So as you're listening, guys, and you're thinking about this, don't hesitate to put into the Q&A here what type of templates or other questions you might have around that we can have Nancy address and then share. Because we've got one more question and then we can go right into that. So, so this has been fantastic, and I'm just wondering here, what is that one piece of advice that you would give to districts before they decide to implement a district-wide EdTech initiative?
So I think that I feel like I might be repeating myself, but I'm going to say it again because I think it's so important. Is I really, really believe that focusing on the why is way more important than focusing on the how. And I know that there is something to learning a new EdTech tool, and I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying what I feel like led to some of the success that we were having with educators was that they understood and had an opportunity to process why portfolios are so important. And again, I know I already said that everyone's kind of on their own journey there, but I think if we had just walked in and said, okay, good morning, I want you to log into Bulb and we're going to show you how to make a page, the connections that they were making there would not be the same as after reading articles talking about learner growth and ways that portfolios can help that happen. I think another thing that I would say as advice on implementing a portfolio system is to make sure that you're talking to educators not about putting final products in the platform, but really talking about how a digital portfolio platform can lead to learner growth and lead to showcasing processes, and really thinking about the best practices instructionally, instead of what product is gonna go into the Bulb, or sorry, into the portfolio. I think that's something we learned along the way. Is we were pretty clear that we wanted to showcase learner growth, but I think that we had to do better at having those conversations with educators and really sharing best practices when it comes to critical thinking and creativity, and it not just being about putting something in a portfolio.
That's fantastic. That's a lot of great advice. So, and as I shared, Nancy has shared with us her full framework of how they implemented and what they've done. So we'll be getting that out to you guys here as soon as we can, because it's just so valuable, especially knowing the number of EdTech tools available, and how do you go about this. And your school, your district is a decent size, and clearly even hearing about these other schools that are different from your elementary, middle, and high school, you've got some interesting components in here that are all being addressed. And with that, I am seeing our first question come in. So we'll go right into Q&A. So guys, don't hesitate to start typing in your questions. We're looking at both the question and answer section, but also in chat. So feel free to share. And this one is, what was COPPEL's purpose statement when they decided to implement digital portfolios?
Sure.
That's a great question.
That's a great question. Let me just,
You got to have a strong purpose statement that's going to guide and lead you, right?
I just happen to have that purpose statement right here. And this took a long time because we had lots of different voices in the room. We had high school CTE educators and kindergarten teachers talking together. I don't know if you want me to read it or if everyone can read it. I'm just going to read it. Why not, right?
Go for it.
A digital portfolio provides a personalized, living collection of artifacts that empowers all CIC learners to curate, document, and communicate beyond the classroom through the progression of their authentic learning and passions through evidence of experiences, reflections, and actionable goals. And yes, that is a very long purpose statement. And I agree, it's almost a little too long, but I feel like everybody was so passionate about each piece of this being documented as a purpose that we had a really hard time even getting it down to this. And I think that where I'm not a huge fan of a huge long purpose statement, I think with digital portfolios, there's just so much that goes into it that I was okay with it being this long. So definitely judge me for the length of it, but I think it's important that a lot of these words were there for our educators to start beginning to see and understand what we were as a district looking for this portfolio to do.
Well, and to your point, I mean, yes, it's longer, but you've got everybody agreeing where there's a lot of people speaking into this. And like you said, you've got kindergarten speaking to, you know, AP English senior. So you've got a whole mix of people all wanting to make sure that this is addressed. And that, I mean, that statement as it reads is so reflective of what a digital portfolio should be and should do for students.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's why I let it sit like that and why I didn't really kind of fight to get it to be smaller, because I didn't want them to not believe in it. And I didn't want them to not be able to take it and like go, because one of the other things I really tried to do in this committee is make sure there was a rep from every campus, because I really needed that voice from the portfolio committee to go back to the campus and be able to speak to why they made the decisions that they did and have just another voice being able to advocate for it.
Fantastic. Any other questions? So I'm not seeing anything coming through right now in our chat or in Q&A, but if you've got one, now's the time to do that.
And if you don't, I could show you one example I just thought of that kind of walks you through like a whole learning lesson. And it's actually from the first piece I'm going to showcase with you is actually from the DLC and their reflection of the lesson that they helped create with an educator. If there's a question, I'm happy to answer it, but if there's not,
let's see it.
Kind of give a good, okay. I gotta find it here. Yeah, okay. So this one is from Kelly Skillenberg, and she helped a math educator at a middle school with a whole new program. Like Reality Composer is a really cool app that just kind of got introduced to us over this past year. And she's a math genius, and she was just like, how can I use this? And then all of a sudden this moment came up where this educator was like, I want to do something different with my my house creation activity. So that the teacher is obviously, you'll see here, they're building their dream home using geometry. And so what they did is they moved it into AR. And so they had to use their math skills in geometry and build a dream home in the AR program. And so she worked with this educator. And the funny thing was, is as they started this project, she was just being introduced herself to using Reality Composer. So it's like her learning progress through coaching an educator through a learner's learning process. So it was like, I'm learning too. I don't even know what you're talking about yet, but I'm gonna know by next week, you know. And so she talked a lot about, like, kind of reflected about what she did and how she designed and what she did to help the educator. And then then she uploaded her. So this is her version of the house to use as an exemplar with the learners. And this is her outside of one of our buildings. And this is her house. And then we don't need to play it because it's not really about this part. But if you hit play on this, which this can be showcased and shared, I don't mind at all. And Kelly doesn't mind. I asked her.
I took a peek at it already before we even started this conversation because I was like, what is that? And it's so cool.
She walks through the house and records it on her iPad, and it's a physical, like, it is the size of a house. Like, it's not like it takes up the whole parking lot and basically then she had like her process, how the kids walk through it. She took pictures of the kids doing their work and using their iPads. And then they had to take like this picture, they had to take it and move it into Reality Composer. So cool. So she took her little pictures and put them in a carousel, reflected about each picture so she knew what was going on later. Then she did day 2. Again, now she's starting to get images, like screenshots of the kids' houses. And I hope she has it on here. I can't remember if she does or not. But and then she goes through and took some videos of the kids struggling through the process, their dog barking. And then she had the kids do some reflection in their bulb. And so she took some screenshots because she didn't want to like privacy and stuff like that. So for her own blog. But then look, this is the coolest. I'm just going to play it. You probably won't be able to hear it, but these are the kids all with their houses up in this big piece of grass, and they're all walking through their house describing what was happening. I mean,
that is awesome.
So cool. And so then she took a video and added it. And so now she has this like reflection and process that she has now begun sharing with other educators and other coaches so that they can walk their educators through the same type of process. And it's just really cool.
Where was this math when I was in school?
Right?
Yeah.
I think I drew something like this on a piece of paper and threw it out. But think about the kids, like they have now a reflection page just like Kelly Skillenberg does. And they're going to have that project until they after they graduate. They're going to
they take it with them.
They take it with them.
Mm-hmm. That could be their dream home someday.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Even digital stuff gets lost. And if you're curating it into one place, that's what I've learned, even with my son, is like, I take so many pictures, but it gets lost if I don't do something with it. And I think that's another just positive to these portfolios, is that the kids are now going to be able to take their learning with them and not forget what they did. I mean, they're going to forget what they did, but now they've got a place to go back and look at it.
That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's fantastic. And actually we're at about 12:54 now, or I should say 1:54 Central Time. So I think I'm going to take back that screen if that's okay with you.
Sure.
And
do you want me to stop sharing? Here.
Yeah, if that's okay. Oh, perfect. And I'll grab it. And I just want to close us out. But before I do that, first, thank you so much, Nancy, for giving us this time and for sharing your story and the continuing story that's happening at Capel and the great work that you guys are doing with your students and your educators. So thank you for doing that. I want to let you guys know always, I think it's important to make sure that anybody here that's new on the webinar, that you know that Bold Plus is free for all educators all the time. So if you haven't created your account, please do so and make sure that you select Bold Plus and that you share that you're an educator and get working in there. We'll be sharing out this webinar in the next day or so, along with these resources that Nancy has so graciously also shared with us and her team. And just a heads up to you that very shortly we'll be announcing the next webinar invite for the end of this month, June 30th. We'll be actually speaking to an international school located in Netherlands, and how they went from a grade-oriented school to a reflection-oriented school, and how they went about doing that. So we hope you join us for that. And Nancy, again, thank you so very much. And thank you all for joining us during your summer.